Before dawn in Los Angeles, Megan Wilson was already at her desk. Outside the window, stars still twinkled, and the famous sign on the Hollywood Hills was barely visible. Her fingers moved the mouse, continuing the final adjustments to her graphic design. The deadline for Wilson Creative was today. Megan had built her design company all by herself. The studio that started small had now become reputable in the industry, with requests from major corporations coming in constantly. However, there was no family to truly celebrate her success. Taking a sip of coffee, Megan glanced at an envelope placed in the corner of her desk. It was an invitation to her parents' 50th wedding anniversary party. The formal wording urging her to return home after 15 years felt devoid of warmth. They probably just sent it out of obligation, she murmured to herself. Speaking to herself, Megan recalled the familiar scenes of her childhood home. Her early years spent in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Her father George and mother Martha, with their conservative values, always emphasized stability and a tradition, and never tried to understand Megan's passion for art. Stop chasing useless dreams. You should get a proper job, her mother's words still lingered in her ears. When Megan expressed her desire to attend art school, her parents strongly opposed it. Her father worked at a local insurance company, and her mother was a former high school teacher. The ideal daughter they envisioned didn't include being an artist. Meanwhile, her sister Rachel was following the life path her parents had hoped for. After graduating from the University of Michigan Law School, she was now successful at a law firm in Detroit. Family conversations always centered around Rachel's success stories, while Megan's existence was like a shadow. If only my sister weren't so stubborn, things would have gone much better for her, Rachel would say. Megan had heard this countless times. Returning to her computer screen, making the final design adjustments, Megan recalled the events from 15 years ago. At 20, after a heated argument with her parents, she left home with just a little money. She bought a one-way ticket to Los Angeles, determined to pursue her dreams. The first few years were hellish. Working as a waitress at a cafe during the day, dedicating nights to studying design. Attending community college while gradually building her portfolio. Looking back, she felt those hardships had shaped who she was today. Megan stood up and headed to the kitchen. Her apartment wasn't spacious, but it was located near Beverly Hills in Los Angeles. The modern interior, dominated by black and white, reflected her design aesthetic. The morning sun began to shine through the windows, announcing the start of a new day. Taking the invitation in her hands again, Megan sighed deeply. Repairing her relationship with her parents might be difficult. However, 50 years of marriage deserved celebration. Somewhere in her heart, Megan still wished to restore the bonds with her family. I should go, she decided, marking her calendar. The anniversary party was just a week away. She needed to prepare a special gift. Megan headed to her study and pulled out an old file box she hadn't looked at for a long time. Inside were records of her family that she had collected over 15 years, newspaper clippings, photos of the family taken from afar, receipts for her mother's hospital bills that she had secretly paid, medical records of her father's heart surgery, and records of financial aid for Rachel's law school education. After leaving home, Megan had continued to support her family anonymously. When she learned her parents were struggling with mortgage payments, she provided funds through a third party. When Rachel's scholarship fell short, she supported her behind the scenes. The family didn't know, but Megan had always watched over and supported them. She decided to create an album, a special album that beautifully compiled 15 years of love and sacrifice. She hoped to make it the first step toward repairing her relationship with her family. I wonder if they'll understand this time, she thought, with mixed feelings of hope and anxiety, as she began to spread out the materials. Return to Ann Arbor. Stepping off the plane at the small airport in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Megan took a deep breath of her hometown's air. Unlike Los Angeles's dry air, Michigan in May was humid with a sweet scent lingering in the air. As she drove the rental car toward her parents' house, she felt a tightness in her chest. 15 years. Megan murmured quietly, gazing at the lush suburban landscape. She couldn't believe how much time had passed since she left home with just a short note saying, "I'm in LA." When the white two-story family home came into view, Megan pulled over to the side of the road and took a deep breath. She checked herself in the rearview mirror and reapplied her lip balm. She wanted to show her family that she had succeeded and was happy. After ringing the doorbell, the door opened to reveal her mother, Martha. Her mother seemed smaller than Megan remembered. Neatly arranged white hair and the same pearl necklace she always wore. Megan. Martha's expression showed surprise and confusion. Though Megan had notified them in advance, it seemed she hadn't really expected her to come. "Hello, Mom," Megan tried to sound cheerful, but her voice trembled slightly. Martha hesitated for a moment before awkwardly embracing her daughter. Her arms felt warm, but somehow formal. "Sorry I'm late. The flight was delayed a bit. I'm honestly surprised you came." "George, Megan is here," Martha called out. The sound of a television could be heard from the living room. Her father rose heavily from his favorite armchair. His once imposing frame was now a bit rounder, and his hair had turned completely white. "Hey, Megan," her father's greeting was simple, making it difficult to read his emotions. He took her hand in a handshake-like manner, then quickly let go. "It's been a long time, Dad," Megan said. She placed her small suitcase in the hallway and entered the living room. The interior decoration had hardly changed. The same sofa, the same wall clock, and family photos arranged above the fireplace, photos from the 15 years Megan had been away. Rachel's college graduation, her first day at the law firm, vacation photos with her parents. Megan's image was nowhere to be found. "Isn't Rachel here yet?" Megan asked. Martha's expression immediately brightened. "She'll arrive this evening. She said she'd be late because she had an important trial this morning. She's become such a busy lawyer." Megan smiled. "I've heard. That's wonderful. And you, is your design work going well?" George asked. His tone implied that it wasn't a real job. "Yes, very well. Last year, I received the Emerging Designer Award from Ad Age. I now run my own studio." George's response was curt. "Well, as long as you have a stable income, I suppose." Megan didn't argue, just nodded. The atmosphere in the room felt heavy. "We've prepared the guest room for you. If you want to put your things away and settle in," Martha said. Megan felt a small pang at what was once her room now being called a guest room. She obediently followed and went upstairs. Her former room had been arranged like a hotel room. Posters had been removed from the walls and replaced with neutral paintings. All traces of Megan had been completely erased. As she unpacked her suitcase and took out her dress for tomorrow's anniversary party, she heard the front door open. "I'm home." Megan took a deep breath and went downstairs. In the entrance hall stood Rachel, dressed in a suit. She looked a size larger than Megan and was greeting her parents with a confident attitude. "Megan." Rachel's eyes widened in surprise when she spotted her sister. "You really came." "Yes, I received the invitation." Rachel approached Megan and formally kissed her on the cheek. "After 15 years? It's been a while. You haven't changed much." Megan didn't miss the sarcasm hidden behind those words. Dinner and preparations. The dinner table was filled with tension. Martha repeatedly brought up Rachel's recent successes, eagerly asking about the possibility of her becoming a partner at the prestigious Detroit law firm. George also frequently asked questions, clearly proud of his daughter's achievements. "So, Megan, any plans for marriage?" Martha suddenly changed the subject. Megan was momentarily at a loss for words. "I'm focusing on my work right now." "You're getting to be that age," Martha said meaningfully. "Isn't it getting a bit late for you to have children?" Rachel interjected. "I'm planning to get married next year. Do you know Thomas? He's an investment banker from Chicago." Megan listened silently. Rachel continued talking about her plans to buy a luxury apartment and her vacation trips to Europe. Occasionally, she would glance at Megan as if to say, "I hope someday you'll have a stable life too." Back in her room, Megan took out the album materials from her luggage. The half-completed album was filled with photos and records that told the story of 15 years. She opened the last page and carefully pasted in the trust fund documents. This fund, which she had established for her parents' retirement, was Megan's biggest secret. Since leaving home, she had invested most of her income here. "That's everything," she whispered. Tomorrow at the party, she would give this album to her parents and reveal the truth of the past 15 years. Her hands trembled slightly. The anniversary party. Sunlight streaming through the gap in the curtains woke Megan. Today was her parents' 50th wedding anniversary. She took a deep breath and gazed at the handmade album by her pillow. Completed last night with final touches, it was a treasure filled with 15 years of her feelings. "May today be a new beginning," she whispered prayerfully as she slowly got out of bed. Lively sounds could already be heard from downstairs. Preparations for the anniversary party must have begun. Megan quickly got dressed, placed the album in her bag, and went downstairs. "Good morning, Mom," she greeted. In the kitchen, Martha was bustling about. The sight of her mother cooking in an apron was exactly as she remembered from childhood. "Oh, Megan." "Good morning," Martha answered without turning around. "I'm busy today. We'll have many guests this afternoon. Can I help?" "It's fine. Rachel will help me. You should get ready to welcome the guests." Megan nodded quietly. On her way from the kitchen to the living room, she ran into her father, George. "Good morning, Dad." "Oh, Megan," George replied briefly without looking up from his newspaper. By afternoon, the house began to buzz with arriving guests. Old friends and relatives of her parents gathered with congratulatory words and gifts. Megan greeted them with a smile. Some remembered her and asked about her work in Los Angeles, but many couldn't even recall her name, greeting her with, "Oh, you're the..." Rachel appeared an hour after the party had started. She moved about in her elegant suit, spreading confident smiles and enjoying conversations with her parents' friends. "May I have your attention, please?" Rachel suddenly called out. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to her. "Today is a special day to celebrate the 50th wedding anniversary of my beloved parents. I want to express my gratitude and respect for the wonderful half-century of love and patience they have built together." After her fluent greeting, Rachel produced a large box, a luxury shopping bag with the distinctive Louis Vuitton logo. "Dad, Mom, this is my token of appreciation." Martha received the box with a small cry of delight. Inside was the latest design Louis Vuitton handbag and a luxury watch for George. "Oh, how lovely!" Martha exclaimed, clutching the bag to her chest. "Such a thoughtful gift, just like you, Rachel." George also picked up the watch, beaming with a broad smile. "Even without a son, having you is more than enough." Laughter spread through the room, followed by applause. Megan stood quietly in the corner, preparing herself mentally. She too had prepared an important gift for her parents. As the applause subsided, Megan slowly stepped forward. "Dad, Mom, I would like to give you something too." The room fell silent. The smiles disappeared from her parents' faces, replaced by confused expressions. Rachel had a smirk on her face as she whispered something to a friend. Megan took the album out of her bag. With "The Wilson Family's 15 Years" embossed in gold on the pure white leather cover, it contained everything of herself. "This is my heartfelt gift to you." Megan presented the album to her parents. Martha took it, but her expression showed obvious disappointment. She opened it and glanced at the first page. "I don't want this trash," Martha said. Her voice was quiet, but clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. Megan stood frozen. George took the album from his wife and flipped through a few pages. His face showed disgust. Rachel stood beside her parents, clutching the Louis Vuitton bag and laughing. My sister is really useless, she said. Her words were as sharp as a blade, deeply wounding Megan's heart. The atmosphere in the room became tense, and the guests awkwardly averted their eyes. Suddenly, George stood up and threw the album toward the fireplace. You always disappoint us, he said. His voice contained anger and disappointment. The album opened in the fireplace, and the pages began to be licked by flames. The sight of photos and documents warping and turning black seemed to burn Megan's heart as well. Several guests gathered around the fireplace, anxiously watching the burning album. But no one tried to stop it. Rachel's lips bore a triumphant smile. She hugged the Louis Vuitton bag preciously, as if enjoying her sister's humiliation. Megan took a deep breath, pretending to be calm. Something inside her broke, and at the same time, something grew stronger. She slowly approached her parents and smiled. That smile showed neither sadness nor anger. Only quiet certainty. Are you sure you want to burn it? She asked. That was all she said before turning gracefully on her heel. Her back was straight as she walked toward the entrance, never bending. George and Martha momentarily looked confused but quickly composed themselves. Rachel pretended to be indifferent, but anxiously looked at her parents, wondering what her sister's last words meant. Well everyone, let's continue. It's time for cake. Martha cheerfully announced, trying to change the subject. The guests, though awkward, began moving toward the refreshment table. As Megan left the entrance, she looked up at the sky while walking to her car. A cloudless blue sky stretched above. She took out her mobile phone and typed a short message. Execute. As she pressed the send button, a quiet smile appeared on Megan's face. When the album was completely burned, everything would begin. She got into her car and started the engine. Without looking back, she left her parents' home. In the fireplace, the last page of the album was being consumed by flames. It contained the trust fund documents and all records of what Megan had secretly done for her parents and Rachel over the past 15 years. Between the burning papers, the figure $1 million was visible for just a moment before turning to ash and disappearing. The revelation. 3 days later, a luxury car stopped in front of the Wilson home. A man in a suit stepped out and approached the house carrying a heavy leather briefcase. The doorbell rang, and Martha answered. Is this the Wilson residence? I would like to see George and Martha Wilson. Martha, though confused, politely invited the man into the living room. George also looked up from his newspaper, focusing on the visitor. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Michael Collins, representing Megan Wilson as her attorney. The man presented his business card and sat down. Martha and George exchanged confused glances. Megan's lawyer? George frowned. Is there some problem with her? Collins maintained a gentle smile as he opened his briefcase. No, there are no problems. Today, I have been asked by Ms. Megan to explain 2 important matters to you. Martha looked anxious. Is it something she couldn't talk about directly? Ms. Megan has returned to Los Angeles. However, for important business reasons, she chose to contact you through me. Collins took out a series of documents and spread them on the table. First point. Regarding the album that was burned at the recent party. That album contained important records proving Ms. Megan's actions over the past 15 years. George opened his mouth but couldn't speak. Martha pressed her chest with trembling hands. To be specific. Collins began turning pages. In 2010, when your home was in danger of foreclosure, an anonymous benefactor paid the full amount. That anonymous benefactor was Ms. Megan. Martha gasped. What does that mean? We renegotiated with the bank. No, there was no renegotiation with the bank. Ms. Megan paid the full amount through a third party. It was $320,000 at that time. George's face changed color. That can't be. She couldn't possibly have such an amount. Let me continue, Collins proceeded calmly. In 2013, George's heart surgery. The medical expenses of $175,000 not covered by insurance were also paid by Ms. Megan. George was speechless, sinking deep into his chair. He placed his hand on his chest, seemingly tracing back through memories. Furthermore, Rachel's tuition at the University of Michigan Law School. The portion not covered by scholarships, $28,000 per year for 3 years, was anonymously donated by Ms. Megan. At this moment, Rachel, who had come down the stairs, interrupted the conversation. "What are you talking about?" Collins turned around and nodded slightly to Rachel. "You must be Rachel Wilson. You've arrived at just the right time." Rachel entered the living room with a confused expression and looked at her parents. Both were pale. Ms. Megan did many things for Rachel as well. In 2018, when you started working at your first law firm and your salary was lower than expected, she anonymously sent monthly rent subsidies. "What are you saying?" Rachel raised her voice. "I built my career with my own efforts." "Of course," Collins answered calmly. "But perhaps the financial ease allowed you to focus on your career?" Silence dominated the living room. Martha had begun to cry. Deep wrinkles were etched on George's face, and Rachel was at a loss for words. And now, the most important second point, Collins took out new documents. "For the past 10 years, Ms. Megan has established a trust fund for your retirement. The total amount now reaches $1,273,000. Martha let out a small cry and grabbed her husband's arm. "Over $1 million. Yes. This trust fund is designed to ensure your life after retirement. Megan has invested most of her income here to ensure that her parents can live the rest of their lives without financial worries." Collins signed the documents and presented them to the parents. "This trust fund is already legally valid. It is transferred to you as proof of Megan's unconditional love." Martha took out a handkerchief with trembling hands and covered her face. Why didn't she tell us anything?" Ms. Megan said, "Love does not seek returns," Collins answered quietly. "The reason she left your home was actually to support her family. It was to grasp bigger opportunities in Los Angeles and anonymously support her family." George sighed heavily. "We completely misunderstood her." Rachel stood by the window, gazing into the distance. "She must have resented me. And yet, for these 15 years, Ms. Megan has always wished for your happiness," Collins said as he gathered the documents. "Her design company, Wilson Creative, is actually one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. Last year's sales exceeded $12 million, with many Fortune 500 companies among her clients." Martha and George were stunned. The work they had dismissed as not a real job had actually achieved remarkable success. Moreover, Ms. Megan was selected as one of the top 40 under 40 business leaders last year. It was her economic success that made continuous support for you possible. Collins stood up and closed his briefcase. "Finally, let me convey a message from Ms. Megan." He took out an envelope and began reading aloud. "Dear Dad, Mom, and Rachel. When I left home 15 years ago, you probably thought I was a failure. But I had a plan. I believed that while pursuing my dreams, a day would come when I could help my family. The album contained my only wish, to restore our family bonds, but it disappeared in the flames. Still, I love you. I hope someday you will understand. Megan." Martha began crying loudly. George held his head, his shoulders trembling. Rachel quietly shed tears as she stared at the fireplace where the album had been burned. "My role ends here," Collins bowed politely and headed for the door. "If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me anytime." As the door closed, a deep silence fell over the Wilson home. In that silence, they began to face the truth for the first time. 15 years of misunderstanding and rejection. And despite that, Megan's love that never ceased. Martha finally spoke. What terrible things we." George nodded heavily. "We must get her back. Rachel looked at her family from the window, showing a humble expression for the first time. We should go see her. To tell her we were wrong. Reconciliation. For a week after that, letters arrived almost daily at Megan's Los Angeles apartment. Words of apology from George and Martha, long confessions and letters of remorse from Rachel. And the phone that kept ringing. Megan didn't respond to any of them. She stood by the window, thinking as she gazed at the city view. For 15 years, she had shown her love for her family through actions. But now that they knew the truth, could they really change? It's hard to restore trust once it's been betrayed, she murmured, sipping her coffee. Still, deep in her heart, she couldn't completely give up on the bonds with her family. 1 year later, Megan was visiting her parents' home in Ann Arbor again. Unlike last time, she wasn't invited. She herself had decided to meet them. The front door opened, and Martha appeared. Her mother, looking older than last year, had tears shining in her eyes. Megan. Filled with emotions beyond words, Martha embraced her daughter. There was real warmth in those arms, different from the formal embrace of before. Entering the living room, George stood up. The once stubborn expression was gone, replaced by a soft smile and deep remorse. Thank you for coming, daughter. His voice was trembling. Megan slowly approached her father and exchanged an embrace. Welcome home, he said. Above the fireplace hung a new family photo. Megan was in it too. It was a photo from the opening ceremony of her design company. The whole family was together, smiling. I'll make some tea, Martha said as she headed to the kitchen. Your favorite herbal tea. The beloved dog, treated like a son, wagged its tail and approached Megan. Where's Rachel? Megan asked. She'll be here soon, Martha answered. She said she'd leave work early for today. Just then, the front door opened. Rachel came in, but her appearance had changed greatly from a year ago. Instead of a luxury suit, she wore casual clothes, and her features had softened. She approached Megan hesitantly. Thank you for meeting me. The sisters embraced. Overcoming years of conflict, they were trying to restore their bond. I'm working at a local legal aid center now, Rachel said, somewhat embarrassed. For the first time, I feel proud of my work. The family gathered around the table, sharing the events of the past year. It would take time for the wounds to heal. But on this day, the Wilson family had taken a new step. Having realized that true family is not about superficial values or material success, but about care and support for each other, they were slowly but surely beginning to build genuine bonds.